Chapter 1. The Last Transmission. The remnants of the United Nations Security Council huddled around the flickering holographic display, their faces etched with a mixture of disbelief and despair. The message they had just received from the Galactic Confederation was nothing short of an ultimatum: surrender unconditionally or face annihilation. "This can't be happening," whispered the representative from the United States, her voice trembling. "We've come so far, achieved so much. How can they just demand our submission?" The Chinese delegate slammed his fist on the table. "We cannot give in to their demands. We must fight for our freedom, our way of life." As the council members argued, a figure stepped forward from the shadows. It was Commander Alara Vance, the newly appointed leader of Earth's defense forces. Her piercing blue eyes scanned the room, silencing the debate with her presence. "We have no choice but to resist," Alara declared, her voice steady and resolute. "The Galactic Confederation may have superior technology and resources, but we have something they lack: the indomitable human spirit. We will not go quietly into the night." The council members exchanged glances, their resolve slowly strengthening in the face of Alara's conviction. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but surrender was not an option. Alara turned to face the holographic display, her gaze fixated on the image of the Confederation's massive warships looming in Earth's orbit. "We have been preparing for this moment," she continued. "Our scientists have been working tirelessly to develop new weapons and defenses. We may be the underdogs, but we will give them a fight they won't soon forget." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the bunker, signaling an incoming attack. The ground shook as the first wave of Confederation fighters descended upon Earth's surface, their laser cannons cutting through the atmosphere like searing knives. Alara's eyes narrowed, a steely determination etched upon her face. "This is it," she said, her voice barely audible above the chaos. "The Celestial Rebellion has begun. Humanity's final stand starts now." With those words, she turned and strode out of the room, ready to lead Earth's forces into the battle that would decide the fate of their world and their species. The council members watched her go, their hearts heavy with the weight of the momentous task before them. They knew that the road ahead would be long and perilous, but they also knew that they had no choice but to fight, to stand together as one in the face of an enemy that sought to strip them of their freedom and their very existence. And so, as the skies above Earth burned with the fires of war, the human race steeled itself for the greatest challenge it had ever faced, determined to prove that even in the darkest of times, hope and courage could still prevail. Chapter 2. The Battle of Earth. As the Confederation's warships descended upon Earth, Commander Alara Vance stood resolute in the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic displays that showed the enemy's movements. The room buzzed with activity as officers relayed orders and coordinated defenses, the tension palpable in the air. "They're targeting our major cities," Alara said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to evacuate civilians and fortify our positions." She turned to her second-in-command, a grizzled veteran named Marcus Reeves. "Deploy our fighter squadrons to intercept their attack craft. We can't let them gain air superiority." Marcus nodded, his fingers already dancing across the control panel. "Yes, ma'am. Our pilots are ready and waiting." As the battle raged outside, the command center became a hive of activity. Reports flooded in from all corners of the globe as Earth's forces engaged the Confederation in a desperate struggle for survival. Despite their advanced technology and superior numbers, the invaders found themselves facing a tenacious and determined foe. In the skies above New York City, a squadron of Earth's fighters clashed with the Confederation's attack craft, their weapons lighting up the night sky. The human pilots, though outmatched, fought with skill and courage, weaving through the enemy's formations and striking at their weak points. On the ground, Earth's armies battled the Confederation's ground forces, using guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run attacks to slow their advance. In the streets of London, a group of soldiers led by Sergeant Emily Thompson ambushed a column of enemy tanks, using portable EMP devices to disable their systems and render them vulnerable. Back in the command center, Alara watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and trepidation. She knew that every victory, no matter how small, was a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. But she also knew that the Confederation's forces were vast and relentless, and that Earth's defenses could only hold out for so long. As the hours turned into days, the battle raged on, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. Earth's forces fought with everything they had, but the Confederation's superior technology and numbers began to take their toll. Cities fell, and countless lives were lost, but still the human race refused to surrender. In a desperate bid to turn the tide, Alara authorized the use of a new weapon developed by Earth scientists, a massive EMP device that could disable the Confederation's ships and weapons on a planetary scale. It was a risky gambit, but one that could buy them the time they needed to regroup and launch a counterattack. As the device was prepared for deployment, Alara stood before her troops, her voice ringing out with conviction. "This is our moment," she said, her eyes blazing with determination. "We may be the underdogs, but we will not go quietly into the night. We will fight, and we will win, because the alternative is unthinkable." With those words, the device was activated, and a massive electromagnetic pulse swept across the planet, disabling the Confederation's ships and weapons in a single, blinding instant. The tide of battle had turned, but the war was far from over. Earth's forces had bought themselves a reprieve, but they knew that the Confederation would not rest until they had achieved total victory. As the dust settled and the smoke cleared, Alara and her troops prepared themselves for the long fight ahead, knowing that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. They were the last line of defense, the only thing standing between their world and total annihilation. And they would not fail, no matter the cost. Chapter 3: The Gathering Storm. In the aftermath of the Battle of Earth, an eerie calm descended upon the planet. The Confederation's forces, caught off guard by the EMP device, had retreated to regroup and assess the damage. Commander Alara Vance knew that this respite would be short-lived, and she wasted no time in preparing for the next stage of the war. As Earth's forces worked tirelessly to rebuild and fortify their defenses, Alara called a meeting of the United Nations Security Council. The room was filled with the leaders of nations that had once been bitter rivals, but now stood united in the face of a common enemy. "We have struck a blow against the Confederation," Alara began, her voice steady and resolute. "But we all know that this is only the beginning. They will return, and they will be stronger than ever. We must use this time wisely to gather our strength and prepare for the battles to come." The council members nodded in agreement, their faces grim with determination. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they also knew that they had no choice but to fight. As the meeting adjourned, Alara received an urgent message from Earth's intelligence network. They had intercepted a transmission from the Confederation's high command, revealing a chilling truth. The attack on Earth was only the first stage of a much larger plan. The Confederation was gathering a massive fleet, drawn from the far reaches of the galaxy, with the sole purpose of crushing humanity once and for all. Alara felt a sense of dread wash over her, but she pushed it aside. She knew that they could not afford to lose hope, not now. She called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leaders, determined to find a way to counter this new threat. As the meeting progressed, a plan began to take shape. Earth's forces would launch a series of daring raids against key Confederation targets, hoping to disrupt their supply lines and buy themselves more time. At the same time, they would work to build alliances with other species and factions opposed to the Confederation's rule, seeking to turn the tide of the war in their favor. It was a risky strategy, but one that offered the only hope of victory. Alara knew that the odds were stacked against them, but she also knew that they had no choice but to try. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and they would not go down without a fight. As the meeting drew to a close, Alara stood before her fellow leaders, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "We are the last hope of Earth," she said, her voice ringing out with conviction. "We will not let our world fall to the Confederation's tyranny. We will fight, and we will win because we must. The future of our species depends on it." With those words, the gathering storm of war began to build, as Earth's forces prepared for the greatest challenge they had ever faced. The Celestial Rebellion had begun, and the fate of humanity would be decided in the battles to come. Chapter 4. The Raids Begin. As the Confederation's massive fleet gathered in the depths of space, Commander Alara Vance and Earth's military leaders set their plan into motion. The first target was a key supply depot on the Confederation-controlled planet of Zaphon. The depot housed vital resources and equipment that the enemy fleet would need for their impending assault on Earth. A small, elite team of Earth's best soldiers was assembled for the mission, led by Captain Lena Oxton. Known for her quick reflexes and unorthodox tactics, Lena was the perfect choice to lead the daring raid. The team boarded a stealth transport ship and made their way to Zaphon, slipping past the Confederation's patrols undetected. As they approached the supply depot, Lena outlined the plan one last time. "We get in, we set the charges, and we get out," she said, her voice steady and determined. "We hit them hard and fast, and we don't stop until the job is done." The team nodded in agreement, their faces set with grim resolve. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. As they landed near the depot, the team quickly made their way inside, using their advanced weapons and technology to overcome the Confederation guards. They fought their way to the heart of the facility, where they planted a series of powerful explosives. Just as they were about to make their escape, a group of heavily armed Confederation soldiers burst into the room, weapons blazing. Lena and her team fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Just when all seemed lost, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The charges had detonated, setting off a chain reaction that tore through the depot like a wave of destruction. The Confederation soldiers were caught in the blast, giving Lena and her team a chance to escape. As they raced back to their transport ship, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. They had struck a blow against the Confederation, and they had made it out alive. But even as they celebrated their victory, they knew that it was only the beginning. The Confederation would not take this attack lightly, and they would be sure to retaliate with all the force they could muster. Back on Earth, Commander Alara Vance received word of the successful mission. She felt a surge of pride and hope, knowing that her people were fighting back against seemingly impossible odds. But she also knew that they could not rely on raids alone. They needed allies, and they needed them soon. She turned to her advisors, a determined look on her face. "It's time," she said. "We need to reach out to the other species and factions that oppose the Confederation's rule. We need to build a coalition, a united front against our common enemy." Her advisors nodded in agreement, and they set to work, sending out messages and emissaries to the far reaches of the galaxy. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they also knew that they had no choice but to try. As the raids continued and the alliances began to form, the Celestial Rebellion grew stronger, a glimmer of hope in the darkness of war. The fate of humanity still hung in the balance, but for the first time, they had a fighting chance. Chapter 5. Forging Alliances. As the raids against the Confederation continued, Commander Alara Vance and her advisors worked tirelessly to build alliances with other species and factions opposed to the Confederation's rule. They knew that Earth could not stand alone against the might of the enemy, and that they needed all the help they could get. One of the first to answer their call was the Valari, a proud warrior race known for their honor and bravery. The Valari had long chafed under the Confederation's oppressive rule, and they saw the Celestial Rebellion as a chance to fight back and reclaim their independence. Alara met with the Valari leader, a grizzled veteran named Cadus, on a neutral space station. Cadus was initially skeptical of the humans' chances against the Confederation, but Alara's passion and determination won him over. "Your people have shown great courage in standing up to the Confederation," Cadus said, his voice deep and rumbling. "The Valari will stand with you in this fight. Our warriors are yours to command." Alara thanked Cadus, feeling a surge of hope at the prospect of having such formidable allies on their side. With the Valari's support, the Celestial Rebellion grew stronger, and more species began to take notice. Next to join the cause were the Zephyra, a race of brilliant scientists and engineers who had long been oppressed by the Confederation. The Zephyri had developed advanced technologies that could turn the tide of the war. but they had been forced to keep their inventions hidden for fear of retribution. Now, with the Celestial Rebellion gaining momentum, the Zephyri saw a chance to strike back against their oppressors. They offered their expertise and resources to the cause, working alongside Earth scientists to develop new weapons and defenses. As the alliances grew, so too did the scale of the raids against the Confederation. Earth's forces, now bolstered by their new allies, struck at key targets across the galaxy, disrupting supply lines and weakening the enemy's grip on power. But even as they celebrated their victories, they knew that the Confederation would not take these attacks lightly. They had to be prepared for the inevitable counterattack, and they had to be ready to fight with everything they had. Back on Earth, Alara met with her war council, a grim look on her face. "The Confederation will come for us soon," she said. "We need to be ready." The council nodded in agreement, and they set to work, fortifying Earth's defenses and preparing for the battle to come. They knew that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and they were determined to see it through to the end. As the Celestial Rebellion continued to grow, the stage was set for a final, decisive confrontation with the Confederation. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity would not go down without a fight. Chapter 6: The Counterattack. The Confederation's response to the raids was swift and brutal. A massive fleet, larger than any seen before, emerged from the depths of space and set a course for Earth. The Confederation's leaders had grown tired of the Celestial Rebellion's defiance and were determined to crush it once and for all. Commander Alara Vance stood on the bridge of the EDS Resolute, the flagship of Earth's defense fleet. She watched the sensor readings with growing concern as the enemy armada drew closer. The Resolute was one of the most advanced ships in Earth's arsenal, equipped with state-of-the-art weaponry and shielding, but even it seemed small in comparison to the Confederation's might. "All hands, battle stations," Alara ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Prepare to engage the enemy." Across the fleet, crews rushed to their stations, readying weapons and shields. The Valari and Zephyri ships took up positions alongside their human allies, their crews determined to fight to the last. As the Confederation fleet entered weapons range, the battle began in earnest. The Resolute shuddered as its shields absorbed the first volleys of enemy fire, and then it returned fire with a vengeance. The ship's powerful cannons tore through the enemy ranks, destroying dozens of ships with each salvo. But the Confederation's numbers were too great, and they pressed their attack relentlessly. The Celestial Rebellion's ships fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, they fell until only a handful remained. On the Resolute's bridge, Alara gritted her teeth as another explosion rocked the ship. "Status report," she barked. "Shields at 20%, the tactical officer replied. "We can't take much more of this." Alara knew they were running out of options. The Confederation's fleet was closing in, and it was only a matter of time before they overwhelmed the remaining defenders. She had to do something, anything, to turn the tide of the battle. Suddenly, an idea struck her. It was a desperate gamble, but it was their only chance. She turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to the Zephyri flagship." The officer nodded, and a moment later, the face of the Zephyri commander appeared on the view screen. "Commander Vance," he said, his voice strained. "We are losing the battle. What do you propose?" "We need to use the Zephyri's secret weapon," Alara said, "the one you've been working on." The Zephyri commander hesitated. "It's not fully tested," he said. "We don't know if it will work." "We have to try," Alara insisted. "It's our only hope." The Zephyri commander nodded grimly. "Very well. We will prepare the weapon, but it will take time." "We'll buy you that time," Alara said. She turned to the tactical officer. "Divert all power to shields and weapons. We're going to hit them with everything we've got." The Resolute surged forward, its weapons blazing as it charged headlong into the enemy fleet. The Confederation ships fired back, but the Resolute's shields held, and it plowed through their ranks like a juggernaut. For a moment, it seemed like they might actually win. But then, disaster struck. A lucky shot from a Confederation ship penetrated the Resolute's shields and struck the bridge. Consoles exploded, and the ship lurched as it lost power. Alara picked herself up off the deck, her head ringing. She looked around the bridge, taking in the damage. Many of the crew were dead or wounded, and the ship was barely holding together. But then a miracle happened. The Zephyri's secret weapon, a massive energy pulse, erupted from their flagship and swept across the battlefield. The Confederation ships, caught off guard, were unable to raise their shields in time. The pulse tore through their hulls, destroying them instantly. In a matter of moments, the tide of the battle had turned. The Confederation's fleet was in ruins, and the Celestial Rebellion's insets, hips battered but unbroken, stood victorious. On the Resolute's bridge, Alara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They had won, but at a terrible cost. The ship was heavily damaged, and many of her crew had given their lives in the battle. But as she looked out at the wreckage of the Confederation fleet, she knew that their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Celestial Rebellion had struck a blow against the Confederation that they would never forget. And with their new allies by their side, they would continue the fight, no matter the cost. The road ahead would be long and hard, but Alara knew that they could not give up. The fate of humanity and of all the free species of the galaxy depended on them, and she would not rest until the Confederation was defeated, once and for all. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. In the aftermath of the Celestial Rebellion's hard-fought victory, the surviving ships limped back to Earth, their hulls scarred and battered. The price of their triumph had been high, with countless lives lost and many ships destroyed beyond repair. As the Resolute entered Earth's orbit, Alara couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet pride. They had done the impossible, defeating the Confederation's fleet against all odds, but the cost had been immense. The ship docked at the orbital station, and Alara disembarked, her mind already racing with the challenges ahead. The Celestial Rebellion had won a major battle, but the war was far from over. The Confederation would not take this defeat lightly, and they would undoubtedly be back with an even greater force. As she made her way through the station, Alara was met by a group of Earth's leaders, their faces etched with a mix of relief and concern. They congratulated her on the victory, but she could sense their unease. They knew, as she did, that this was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the Celestial Rebellion began the difficult task of rebuilding and preparing for the next phase of the war. The Valari and Zephyri pledged their continued support, and new allies began to emerge from the shadows, drawn by the rebellion's success. But even as they worked tirelessly to bolster their defenses and gather new resources, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Reports began to surface of strange activity on the fringes of Confederation space, whispers of a new weapon being developed that could turn the tide of the war once and for all. Alara knew that they had to act fast. She gathered her most trusted advisors and began to formulate a plan. They would send a small team, led by Captain Lena Oxton, to infiltrate the Confederation's research facility and gather intelligence on this new threat. It was a risky mission, but Alara knew that they had no choice. The fate of the Celestial Rebellion and of all the free species of the galaxy hung in the balance. As she watched Lena and her team depart on their mission, Alara couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, filled with countless challenges and dangers, but she also knew that they could not give up no matter the cost. The Celestial Rebellion had already achieved the impossible, and they would continue to do so, no matter what the Confederation threw at them. With their allies by their side and their determination unbreakable, they would fight on until the very end. Chapter 8. The Infiltration. The sleek, black ship glided silently through the void, its presence masked by the most advanced stealth technology the Celestial Rebellion could muster. On board, Captain Lena Oxton and her handpicked team prepared for the most crucial mission of their lives. As they approached the coordinates of the Confederation's secret research facility, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. The intelligence they had gathered painted a grim picture of the horrors that awaited them inside. "Remember," Lena said to her team, her voice steady despite the weight of their task, "our goal is to gather as much information as possible and get out safely. We cannot afford to engage the enemy unless absolutely necessary." The team nodded solemnly, their faces etched with determination. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. As they reached the facility, the ship's AI guided them to a hidden docking bay, its presence masked by a web of sensor-jamming signals. They disembarked swiftly and silently, their weapons at the ready. The facility was a maze of sterile white corridors and high-tech laboratories, guarded by the Confederation's most elite soldiers. Lena and her team moved like ghosts, their every step carefully calculated to avoid detection. As they delved deeper into the facility, the true nature of the Confederation's plans began to reveal itself. In one lab, they discovered schematics for a new type of warship, its weapons systems unlike anything they had ever seen before. In another, they found evidence of experiments on live test subjects, their screams of agony echoing through the halls. Lena's heart raced as they downloaded the data, knowing that every second brought them closer to discovery. Just as they were about to make their escape, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. "We've been detected," Lena shouted over the din. "We need to move, now!" The team raced through the corridors, dodging blaster fire from the Confederation soldiers hot on their heels. They fought their way back to the docking bay, their ship waiting for them like a beacon of hope. But just as they were about to board, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a Confederation officer, his face twisted with rage. "You won't escape this time, rebels," he snarled, leveling his blaster at Lena. In a flash, Lena drew her weapon and fired, the bolt striking the officer squarely in the chest. He crumpled to the ground, his last breath a gurgle of defeat. The team scrambled aboard the ship, the hatch slamming shut behind them. As they rocketed away from the facility, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of relief mixed with dread. They had the information they needed, but at what cost? As they made the long journey back to Earth, Lena pored over the data they had gathered, her mind racing with the implications. The Confederation's plans were more horrifying than she could have ever imagined, and the Celestial Rebellion would need every ounce of strength and cunning to stop them. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, Lena knew that they could not give up. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and they would fight to the bitter end to defend it. Chapter 9. The Revelation. The journey back to Earth was a somber one, the weight of their discovery hanging heavy in the air. Lena and her team had witnessed firsthand the depths of the Confederation's cruelty, and the knowledge of what they were up against settled like a lead weight in their hearts. As they approached the hidden base of the Celestial Rebellion, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. She knew that the information they had gathered would change everything, and she wondered if they were truly ready for what was to come. The base was a hive of activity as they disembarked, rebels rushing to and fro with a sense of urgency. Lena and her team were ushered into a secure briefing room where the leaders of the rebellion awaited them. "What have you found?" Admiral Zara Voss asked, her voice tight with worry. Lena took a deep breath before speaking. "The Confederation is building a new type of warship," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. "Its weapons systems are unlike anything we've ever seen before. They're also conducting experiments on live test subjects, trying to create some kind of super soldier." The room fell silent, the weight of Lena's words sinking in. Admiral Voss rubbed her temples, her face lined with concern. "This is worse than we feared," she said finally. "If the Confederation succeeds in their plans, they'll be unstoppable." "But we can't give up," Lena said, her voice ringing with determination. "We have to find a way to stop them, no matter the cost." The other rebels nodded in agreement, their faces set with grim resolve. They knew that the road ahead would be a difficult one, but they were ready to fight. Over the next few days, the Celestial Rebellion pored over the data Lena and her team had gathered, trying to find any weakness in the Confederation's plans. They worked tirelessly, fueled by a sense of urgency and a deep-seated desire to protect the galaxy from the Confederation's tyranny. As they worked, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in her team. They had risked everything to gather this intelligence, and their bravery had given the rebellion a fighting chance. But even as they made progress, Lena knew that the real battle was yet to come. The Confederation would not give up easily, and they would stop at nothing to crush the rebellion once and for all. As she looked around the room at the determined faces of her fellow rebels, Lena felt a flicker of hope. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the Confederation could never understand: the unbreakable spirit of those who fought for what was right. And with that spirit, Lena knew that they would find a way to prevail, no matter the odds. The Celestial Rebellion would fight on until the galaxy was free from the Confederation's iron grip, or until they drew their last breath. The revelation of the Confederation's plans had only strengthened their resolve, and they would not rest until the job was done. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the Celestial Rebellion was ready to fight for it, no matter the cost. Chapter 10. The Plan. The revelation of the Confederation's sinister plans had sent shockwaves through the Celestial Rebellion. The atmosphere in the hidden base was tense, with rebels hurrying about, their faces etched with determination and concern. Lena and her team had provided the crucial intelligence, but now it was time to act upon it. Admiral Zara Voss called for an emergency meeting of the rebel leaders. They gathered in the war room, a holographic display of the galaxy hovering above the central table. Lena stood among them, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. "We cannot afford to waste any time," Admiral Voss began, her voice firm and resolute. "The Confederation's new warship and their super soldier experiments pose a grave threat to the galaxy. We must find a way to stop them before it's too late." The rebel leaders nodded in agreement, their eyes focused on the holographic display. Lena stepped forward, gesturing to a specific point on the map. "Based on the data we retrieved, the Confederation's main shipyard is located in the Tycho system," she explained. "If we can infiltrate the facility and sabotage their production, we might be able to delay the completion of their new warship." "It won't be easy," Admiral Voss cautioned. "The shipyard will be heavily guarded, and we can expect fierce resistance from the Confederation forces." "We'll need a diversion," Lena suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. "Something to draw their attention away from the shipyard long enough for a small team to slip in undetected." The room fell silent as the rebel leaders contemplated the proposal. Finally, Admiral Voss spoke, her voice filled with determination. "We'll launch a coordinated attack on the Confederation's supply lines in the neighboring systems," she declared. "That should keep them occupied while Lena and her team infiltrate the shipyard." The rebel leaders nodded in agreement, their faces set with grim resolve. They knew the risks involved, but they were willing to do whatever it took to stop the Confederation's plans. As the meeting adjourned, Lena felt a surge of pride and purpose. The Celestial Rebellion was united in their cause, ready to face the challenges ahead. She knew that the road would be difficult, but with the support of her fellow rebels, she believed that they could succeed. Over the next few days, the rebels worked tirelessly to prepare for the mission. Lena and her team trained relentlessly, honing their skills and studying the layout of the Confederation shipyard. They pored over the intelligence they had gathered, searching for any weakness they could exploit. As the day of the mission approached, Lena felt a sense of calm settle over her. She knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, but she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The Celestial Rebellion was united in their purpose, driven by the unbreakable spirit of those who fought for what was right. They would not rest until the Confederation's tyranny was brought to an end, no matter the cost. With the plan in motion, Lena and her team prepared to embark on their most daring mission yet. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and they were determined to succeed, no matter the odds. Chapter 11. The Infiltration. The day of the mission had finally arrived. Lena and her team stood in the hangar bay of the rebel base, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and nerves. The sleek black infiltration ship loomed before them, its angular lines and stealthy design a testament to the Celestial Rebellion's ingenuity. Admiral Voss approached the team, her face etched with concern and determination. "Remember, the success of this mission is crucial to our cause," she said, her voice firm but encouraging. "We're counting on you to sabotage the Confederation's shipyard and buy us the time we need." Lena nodded, her jaw set with resolve. "We won't let you down, Admiral," she replied, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The team boarded the infiltration ship, each member taking their assigned position. Lena settled into the pilot's seat, her hands gripping the controls with practiced ease. The engines hummed to life, and the ship lifted off, gliding smoothly out of the hangar and into the inky blackness of space. As they approached the Tycho system, Lena's mind raced with the details of their plan. They would use the ship's advanced cloaking technology to slip past the Confederation's sensors and land undetected on the shipyard's surface. From there, they would make their way to the main production facility, planting explosive charges at key points to maximize damage. The journey through hyperspace was tense, with each member of the team lost in their own thoughts. Lena glanced around the cockpit, taking in the determined faces of her comrades. They had trained for this moment, and she knew they would give everything they had to ensure the mission's success. As they dropped out of hyperspace, the Tycho system appeared before them, a sprawling network of asteroids and space stations orbiting a massive gas giant. The Confederation shipyard was a behemoth of metal and machinery, its massive dry docks and construction bays bristling with activity. Lena activated the ship's cloaking device, and they slipped silently through the Confederation's defenses, undetected by their sensors. They landed on the shipyard's surface, the infiltration ship's matte black hull blending seamlessly with the shadows. The team disembarked, their weapons at the ready. Lena took point, leading them through the maze of corridors and maintenance tunnels towards the main production facility. They moved with purpose and precision, their movements synchronized and efficient. As they approached their target, the sound of alarms suddenly pierced the air. The Confederation had detected their presence. Lena's heart raced as she realized their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. "We've been compromised," she shouted over the din of the alarms. "We need to move fast." The team sprinted through the corridors, dodging blaster fire and dispatching Confederation soldiers with ruthless efficiency. They reached the main production facility, planting their explosive charges even as the enemy closed in around them. Lena's mind was a whirlwind of adrenaline and focus as she armed the final charge. The team fought their way back to the infiltration ship, the explosions rocking the shipyard behind them. As they blasted off into space, the Confederation shipyard erupted in a blinding flash of light, the sabotage complete. Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, a sense of relief washing over her. But their mission was far from over. The Celestial Rebellion still had a long road ahead of them, and the Confederation would not take this defeat lightly. As they raced back towards the rebel base, Lena knew that the fight for the galaxy's future had only just begun. Chapter 12. The Aftermath. The infiltration team's return to the rebel base was met with a mixture of relief and apprehension. As they disembarked from the ship, the hangar echoed with the sound of cheers and applause from their fellow rebels. Lena and her team had struck a significant blow against the Confederation, but the weight of what was to come hung heavy in the air. Admiral Voss greeted them, her face a mask of both pride and concern. "Well done," she said, clasping Lena's shoulder. "Your bravery and skill have bought us precious time, but the Confederation will not let this go unanswered." Lena nodded, her mind already racing with the implications of their actions. "We need to prepare for their retaliation," she said, her voice firm. "They'll come at us with everything they have." The Admiral agreed, her brow furrowed in thought. "We must rally our allies and fortify our defenses. The Celestial Rebellion must stand united in the face of this threat." As the team dispersed to tend to their wounds and rest, Lena found herself wandering the halls of the rebel base, her thoughts consumed by the challenges ahead. She knew that the Confederation's response would be swift and brutal, and the Celestial Rebellion would need every ounce of strength and determination to weather the storm. In the days that followed, the rebel base buzzed with activity. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair and upgrade ships, while strategists pored over star maps and intelligence reports, seeking any advantage they could find. Lena threw herself into the preparations, training relentlessly and collaborating with her fellow rebels to devise new tactics and strategies. As the Celestial Rebellion braced for the Confederation's inevitable attack, Lena found herself grappling with the weight of her own role in the conflict. She had always believed in the cause, but now, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, she felt the burden of responsibility more acutely than ever. One evening, as she sat alone in her quarters, a knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. It was Zara, her closest friend and confidant. "Hey," Zara said softly, her eyes filled with concern. "How are you holding up?" Lena sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know," she admitted. "I keep thinking about all the lives that depend on us, on the choices we make. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I let them down?" Zara sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Lena. We're all in this together, and you are strong enough. You've proven that time and time again." Lena managed a small smile, grateful for Zara's unwavering support. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." As they sat in silence, the weight of the moment settling over them, Lena knew that the road ahead would be long and perilous. But with her friends by her side, and the strength of the Celestial Rebellion at her back, she felt a glimmer of hope. They would face the Confederation's wrath, and they would fight with every fiber of their being for the freedom and future of the galaxy. The final battle was coming, and Lena knew that she would be ready to face it head-on. For now, she allowed herself a moment of peace, drawing strength from the bonds of friendship and the unwavering determination that had brought them this far. The Celestial Rebellion would stand, and they would fight until their last breath for the cause they believed in.